So today is not a Father's Day message, all right? So if you came for a Father's Day message, it's kind of a bummer. This is going to be kind of a heady thing. So for those of you who are on it and you've already had 9 cups of coffee, you're going to get it. Those of you who would like to take a nap, you're going to miss everything, all right? So inside your program is an outline. I want to encourage you guys to follow along today. We are in a series called Questions. So back several months ago, I kind of floated the idea, if there's anything that you would like me to do a message around, a question that you may have, let me know, and then we can see about building a message around that. And so this is one of the questions that we had. Last week was dealing with conflict. How do you resolve conflict with healthy people? Today is a question that, again, many folks struggle with. I got the email, which is this: how do I know when I'm helping someone or I'm hurting someone? Where is the line where I can clearly see that as a believer, as a family member, as someone who loves this person, where I come alongside of them and help them versus where I am enabling them to continue to make poor choices and kind of destroy their life? Where is the line, right? And unfortunately, there isn't a line that we can just simply say, oh, it's right here. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, it's right there. And everyone can see it, right? It's one of those things where we kind of try to figure it out. Now, what plays into it is the person, if it's you who have a person that you're trying to take care of or help, it's where you allow your emotions to drive you. The moment that you allow your emotions to drive you, you stop seeing clearly where the line is or where the potential line is, and you no longer are looking for a line. You're being driven by your emotions. All right, so let's just start that. All right, so everyone knows what this is? All right, it's a day pack, right? It's kind of a knapsack, all right? When our kids were little, and this is actually it, so someday this is going to go into the Hall of Fame. When our kids were small and we would go to Disneyland or we'd take day trips, this is what Pastor Dad carried around, right? Slung it over his shoulder, and in there could be juice bars, fishies, granola bars, boxes of cereal, Lord knows what, right? There's all kinds of things in there, right? And so Tammy and I would pack it, mostly Tammy. She would pack it as we got ready to go, and it would take care of our daily needs for our kids and for ourselves as we would go out on a day trip. All right, so we all got that. We kind of get the idea. And so when we would go to Disneyland, we'd fill it up with, because we'd go on the cheap, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, crackers, all that kind of stuff. And then, Pastor Dan would throw it around and put it on, carry it around, and all would go good. And then when all of our crumb crunchers were hungry, which was like every second of the day, we'd just keep pulling out stuff out of here. It's like a magic thing. It just like goes forever, right? And so we kind of know. So here's what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine that this is what the proverb writer is going to say is your heart, okay? Because in it is what, in a day pack, is what you carry your daily supplies in, all right? So look with me in your outline. So Proverbs says this in chapter 4, verse 23. Above all else, right, have lines drawn around your day pack. And here's why. Because your heart is not the heart in your chest that we're talking about here, but in your heart, number one, is the inner person. It's the core values. It's your emotions. It's your thoughts. It's your decisions. It's your principles. It's what you wake up every morning, and you don't recognize this, but you put on your day pack. And in it, you are carrying what you need for that day. Your thoughts, your core values, your emotions, those types of things. You pack it in. So the proverb writer says this: above all else, you need to have boundaries, is what we're going to talk about today. You need to have boundaries around your day pack. Okay? Now let me just throw this out and we'll flesh it out. Most people who struggle with folks who you're enabling, most people struggle with the emotions, the thoughts, their core values that are in conflict with yours. Okay? So get your mind around that. That is where the tension begins. If you could imagine, you have in here your thoughts, your emotions, your core values, your principles, your convictions in life. They have one handle, you have the other handle. They are pulling their core values, their ways, their wishes, their wants against yours. And there's this tension that is going against each other. And this is where most believers struggle. How do I deal with that? Just as last week I said, most believers don't like conflict. Most believers want to wrestle with and believe that we can become their God, their conscience, their decision makers, their helper, and that we can pull them onto our side. And there's this tension that begins to happen in it. And then you sit late at night because you can't sleep, and you wrestle with, am I helping? Am I hurting? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Right? And then we bring into the teachings of Christ, if someone harms you, someone hits you, turn the other cheek. If someone asks for your shirt, give them your cloak. Someone says go 1 mile, go 5 miles. And we bring that in and we go, well, how does that work? Because according to that, I should just go ahead and give them my whole day pack. Right? Or, and here's what we do, we take their whole day pack and we carry their day pack. And when we do that, that is the tension that you feel. And that is the rub where it's like, am I helping? Am I hurting? You know, that kind of stuff. Am I an enabler? Am I codependent? You know, that kind of stuff. Right? So let's take a look. You ready? Yeah, you got to put your thoughts hat on in this. Number 2. So God gives us a design of a healthy family or a healthy relationship, not family, healthy relationship. There's two key components. For sake of time, we could literally do months and months and months on this. But there are 2 key elements in a healthy relationship. One is the word grace, and the other one, and you can go ahead and fill in your outline, is the word truth. When we look at what is a healthy relationship has grace in it, and it has truth in it. All right? So we have the idea of grace. Well, what is grace? And again, I don't want to get into a long theological description of what grace is, but let's just kind of clear it up and make it easy. Grace is this: God is for me, He's not against me, right? There's nothing I can do that God will love me more, and there's nothing I can do that God will love me less. That's grace. Right? Are we following along? Right? And so in 1 Peter, here's what Peter says. It says, each of you should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administrating God's grace in various forms. Okay, so get this. When it comes to our relationship with the Lord, we experience grace. Vertically, we experience grace. God's for us. He's not against us. There's nothing we can do that He'll love us more. There's nothing we can do that He'll love us less. We all love grace. Amen? Amen to that, right? And so here's what Peter says. Peter says, listen, we receive grace vertically, but as believers, we are to distribute it horizontally in our relationships with other people. So we are to be stewards of the grace He's given us. God is for us. He's not against us. He's on our side. And we are to distribute that out in our human relationships with the people in and around us. All right? And so we are to give that. We are to be for them. We're not to be condemning. And I know some of you are going, oh, wait a minute, is Pastor Dan saying do whatever you want? We'll get the truth in a minute, all right? But we are to be for them. We're not to be against them. We're not to be condemning. We're not to be judgmental. We're not to throw them under the bus as soon as they open up their mouth. We need to experience the grace that we get. We distribute it out this way, all right? The second component in a healthy relationship is truth, right? Well, what is truth? Truth is like gravity. Everyone climbs up on the building at the end of the service, which is what we're all going to do, and we all jump off. We're all going to experience truth. Right? We're all going to fall 30 feet, which is painful. The first service did it. All right? So we're going to jump out, and it's all going to be bad news. So we experience truth in our relationship. In Ephesians, it says, instead, speak the truth in, all right? We're to speak the truth in love. So there's grace. God is for us. He's not against us. We are to distribute that out in our human relationships with other people. But there's also the component that when we speak, we are to speak the truth in love. Number 3, healthy relationships include grace to provide safety and truth to provide structure that we need. Okay? I'll just pause, get your minds around this. If you have a healthy relationship with a person, it is safe, it is not judgmental, it's not condemning, but there's also an element of truth. If you continue to make those choices, listen, your company isn't going to keep you around. Okay? Now, in healthy relationships, you can have grace and truth going both ways. Are we following? Now, they may not say, thank you, Dad, I love to hear the truth. They may not say it, but they embrace it. All right? It is nearly impossible. It is nearly impossible to have a healthy relationship with a person where you do not have both grace and truth going both ways. All right? So some of you are trying that. It's not going to work. You know that, but you keep trying. It's impossible to have a healthy relationship with a person that you do not have grace and truth going both ways. It's a safe environment, it's a secure environment, and yet the reality is there's truth that's spoken in love in the midst of that relationship. All right? So we have to have both grace, safety, truth, structure in the relationship. So when you have a person who is unhealthy and you do not have grace and truth, you are going to have a very difficult time to have a healthy relationship. Now let me just say this. Most folks that you have an unhealthy relationship, they embrace grace, they do not embrace truth. Okay? They embrace, it's a safe environment, I love you no matter what, I'm here for you, right? They embrace it. Truth, hey, listen, you got to check into rehab. They don't want. Okay? So they're usually one-dimensional. They love the love of God, but they're not interested in the truth of God. Right? Are we tracking okay? You okay? You guys are pretty quiet, so that's good. You got your thinking caps on, or you're filling out your card and you're just totally bored. Number 4, here's 2 common traits of an unhealthy person. Now again, we could have gone on for months and months, and there's tons of stuff out there. Henry Cloud's stuff on boundaries is by far the best stuff. So if you're interested in more, look up anything from Henry Cloud on boundaries. It's good stuff. So there are 2 common traits of unhealthy people. The first one is the person who is out of control. Okay? The person who is out of control is typically impulsive. They act out. They're destructive. They destroy people. They destroy balance. They destroy relationships. They destroy their own life. They're out of control. Okay? And so in Romans chapter 13 gives a description. It's not a complete description, but an idea of a person whose life is out of control. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in orgies, drunkenness, sexual immorality, debauchery, all the like. So it gives us a little bit of a picture of a person's life who is just completely off the track and is completely out of control. Again, these people, they like grace. I'm for you. I love you. There's nothing you can do that would cause me to love you less. They embrace that, but truth, they resist. They'll push back as hard as they possibly can in that. In your outline, what happens if you love that person, the out-of-control person, you will start taking responsibility for their problems, their pain, their emotions, and if their addiction. So here's what you do. You, because you love them, you grab their day pack, which is their daily necessities, and you take control of it, and you continue to parent. You may not be the parent, but you continue to act as the parent. You cover for them, you watch out for them, you do all kinds of those things, right? If they're addicts, you say, hey, I'm the designated driver, here's some material to read. You call them up at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. You say, hey, you're not drunk yet, that's great. And you think they're telling you the truth, which they never are. They're going to lie to you. They're only going to tell you what you need to hear. And so you take their daily necessities, you take control of it, and you hold on to it, okay? And this is what causes you, as an enabler, codependent, causes you all the pain, okay? You are taking over, and let me just say this, you are becoming their little case G God, okay? And you think you can change them, fix them, solve their problems, blah, 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 blah. And so you take it from them, okay? So that's the out-of-control person. Then you have, and let me just say this is the same person, you have the person who is controlling, which is what's interesting. The person who is out of control typically becomes very controlling. Their life is spinning out of control, but they want to control everybody else, which is kind of an interesting thing to try to get your mind around as to why that they do that. But they become very controlling. 2 primary ways: anger and guilt. Okay? Anger, I get mad when I don't get it my way. You want to take my knapsack from me, but you're not going to let me call the shots? Then I'm just going to get angry because it isn't fair, and, blah, 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 and you love me more than you love my brother more than me, all that kind of stuff. They get angry to try to control you. All right? The second way that they try to control you is guilt. Guilt is much different than anger. Anger tries to drive you by fear. Guilt tries to drive you by emotion. All right? So they're not mad and they don't blow up because they don't get their way. They're hurt. Well, Mom, if you just gave me the chance like you gave so-and-so, I wouldn't be in this mess right now. In fact, my life would be perfect, and I'd probably have a PhD from Stanford, and blah, 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 blah. And, and it's guilt to try to make you feel guilty so that they get their way. Right? Some of you are going, aha, I figured it out. I didn't know it, right? And here's the thing. They'll bounce back and forth depending on your mood and your frame of mind. If you don't back down in fear, then they will play the guilt card for you, okay? And sometimes they'll play it all in the same conversation. And so you just pay close attention to that. So, can you have grace and truth in a relationship like that? And the answer is no. But we keep trying. And we grab their knapsack, and we allow our emotions to drive us and function, cause us to make choices and so forth. And that's where we feel that tension, like, man, this isn't working, but I just feel like as a believer, as a Christ follower, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and all that stuff. And it really begins to wear on us and on the family. You agree with that? Number 5. Having a relationship with someone with either of these types of personalities, and you can even say that they're all can be the same types, is not healthy or balanced. It is not good for you, in which case many of you go, duh, and God never intended it for it to happen. Okay? That is not the model of a healthy relationship that you should have. And that's where boundaries come in. Okay? Now, again, there's a lot of folks who understand what boundaries are. The vast majority of believers do not. They've heard of the book, and someone once told them that kind of stuff. Maybe they even heard Henry Cloud on the radio or something. But as far as understanding how to administer them in our life, they don't understand. So let me give you this picture in your mind. Number 6 in your outline. So what are boundaries? How do they fit in? Where do they come from? Boundaries are to restore God's balance in relationships. So think of boundaries as a property line around your house, okay? And your daily necessities, your knapsack, that's your house, okay? because this is what you put on every morning that you wake up and you go out into the world. All right? So, let me give you this. If your next door neighbor, you walk out and you look over in their front yard, and in the middle of their front yard is this great big old mud puddle, and you see all the dirt boiling over, right, which is in California, that's gold right there. That's water pouring out. We don't care about gas, we care about water, and it's pouring out, and your neighbor comes over to you and says, "Hey, Dan, I want you to fix it." You know what you'd say? You know what I'd say? That's in your yard. I'm not fixing it. Why would I fix it? And then I'd take them out to the curb, and I'd show them, if you live in an older neighborhood, I'd show them on the curb where they draw boundaries. And there's a little X right there on your curb on each side of your house, and I'd say, "See that line? Just go like this. Right there. That's my house. That's your house. You fix it. That ain't on me." Now, I could, as a believer, I could walk out, knock on the guy's door, and say, "Hey, man, you got a problem out there. When you get ready to fix it, let me know. I'd be happy to help you." Right? I could do that as a believer. But his broken plumbing isn't my problem because it's in his yard and my yard is on this side. Okay? Now, we got that picture? Why is it that we feel like when someone looks at us and says, "My plumbing's broken, you fix it," you feel obligated to do it? Some of you are going, "Never thought of it that way." Because if you think of it that way, you remove the emotion, don't you? It's gone. Now it becomes, that's his problem. And as a believer, if the Spirit of God says, "Go over and help the dude out," hey, go for it, man. God bless you. But you're not obligated to do it because there is a boundary, there's a property line around your house in which clearly designates what you are to do and what you're not to do. Right? And as believers, that becomes very cloudy for us to discern which is it where I'm helping and which is it where I'm hurting. When as a believer do we go carry the cloak, go the second mile, give the guy our cloak? How do we do all that? So let me help to bring a little clarity to this in your life. Now, if you go back to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 13, just to remind or read it again, he says, "Above all else, draw a line around your daily knapsack." Well, why? Because out of your daily knapsack comes your life. You have your emotions, your core values, your thoughts, your principles. You have everything in there. Draw a property line around it and guard it. Because if someone comes in and begins to take it or grabs a hold of this handle and begins to pull, you're going to have tension. And from that, your life is emanating out of what's in it. And if you grab someone else's day pack and you take it over, you were never meant to carry their day pack. They were meant to carry their day pack. And when you take it, you become and you take responsibility for their life. Okay? So, let's flesh it out. We'll get her all cleared up. You guys will all go home. And we'll all be in good shape. None of us will be codependents, right? Number 7. You're like, what? Either you have no idea what I'm saying, right? Or this is like way too close to home. My hunch is, typically is way too close to home. This is something that all families struggle with all the time. Number 7. Is there are 2 key aspects to boundaries, okay? And Galatians chapter 6 is going to help us to see with clarity what's taking place. So here's what Paul says, Galatians 6, verse 1. "Brothers, if someone is caught in sin, you who are spiritual should restore," circle the word restore, "him gently, but watch for yourself, or you may be tempted," okay? So here's what Paul is saying. Paul is saying this, that as believers in Jesus Christ, those of you who are people who are caught, the word there, the phrase can mean both caught, you watched them do it, or that their sin, their choices that they've made, have all of a sudden kind of blown up and everybody knows what's taking place. Or not everybody, but the family knows what's taking place. Okay? So those of you who are Christ followers, if someone in your family is caught, you watch them, or it's just kind of exploded, that you are to restore them. That word restore is the same word that you would get for fixing or mending a broken bone. Okay? So we are to set it, we are to put a cast on it, we are to care for it, we are to do it, and how are we to do it? Gently, right? You don't want a doctor going in there yanking on stuff and pulling when you got a broken bone, right? You want him to come in with precision, put it into place, cast it, send you on your way with Vicodin, right? So we are to restore them gently. So we are to, in your outline there, we are to learn to confront in love, right? Grace, truth. We are to confront them in love. And maybe the word confront is maybe a little harsh. It sounds like, yeah, you get in their face, you got their finger going on. And I don't mean that. But we are to do that in a way of restoring them. And then in John chapter 8, and I don't have all the time to read through it, but that is a perfect example of a balance between grace and truth. The Pharisees come to Jesus and the teachers of the law. There's a woman caught in adultery. The law of Moses says she's caught in adultery. We should stone her. Jesus says, hey, those who have sinned, go ahead and fire the first rock. Bends down, looks around. They scramble, right? And at the end of the story, he stands up and he says, hey, where'd they all go? And they all headed for the hills. And then Jesus says to her, he says, go and leave your sin and walk away. There's no condemnation. There's no, I cannot believe it. It's the fifth guy. There's grace. But leave it. There's truth. Okay? So when we have a relationship with a person whose life may be a bit spinning out of control, then we go to them, and we go to them with grace, with the attitude, and with the prayer to restore them in the mess that they're in. Are we going okay? We're not taking their daily knapsack. We're coming alongside of them in a season when somebody has made a horrible choice, or maybe many choices. We come alongside of them to restore them. Okay? Now, Galatians 6, verse 2 follows, and it begins to tell us the difference between the load and the burden. Verse 2. Carry each other's burdens. Okay, and we'll come back to that. And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. Verse 3. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Verse 4. Each of you should test his own actions. Then you can take pride in himself without comparing yourself to someone else. Verse 5. For each one should carry his own load. Okay, so here we go. In your outline, the very first part of verse 2 says that we are to carry each other's burdens. So follow. The word burden is like a large rock has fallen from the heavens and has crushed the person. We as believers are to come alongside of those people in that season, and we are to carry their burden that they're going through in their life. So, a burden at this time could mean a divorce. Now, I know divorce, there's always two sides to every story. I get it, got it. But I recognize that there's emotional problems in there. There's just a ton of different things, emotions and feelings and all kinds of spiritual things that are taking place in there. As a believer, whoever's at fault is irrelevant. We need to come alongside of that person, and we need to help them carry that burden. They may get in, a doctor may call up and say, hey, the report didn't go well. they have some type of an illness. We come alongside of them. Could be a loss of job, a foreclosure, some financial hardship that all of a sudden kind of fell out of the sky. We need to come alongside them for a season to carry their burden. Okay? So do we see the difference, right? Here's my experience talking with folks who wrestle with where's the line, am I helping, am I hurting? I don't know, and I thought through last night and prayed through last night, I cannot recall one conversation where I've had with a person that something traumatic has kind of fallen out of the sky into their life, and a person's wondered if they should help or not help. Okay? A divorce, an illness, a loss of job, a foreclosure, all of a sudden something financially happens, poof, there it is. I don't recall anybody that's ever said, Dan, do I help, do I not help? Because I think we understand that something has happened in their life, and we need to, at this season of their life, we need to come alongside of them and help them out. Okay? Does that make sense? Verse 5 says that each one should carry his own load. Well, wait a minute. Verse 2 says I'm supposed to carry your burden. Verse 5 says I got to carry my own load. Which is it? Well, they don't mean the same thing. In your outline, to carry his own load means to carry his own knapsack. His own emotions, his core values, right? His daily necessities, what he wakes up in the morning or she puts on in the morning, what they put on. They are to carry that. But if a divorce happens, if an illness happens, if some type of financial, happens in their life, we are admonished and encouraged to come alongside of them and help them carry that burden. So this is where most folks get blurry-eyed. We think carrying their daily knapsack is the same as coming alongside of them during a back-breaking, crushing experience. And this is where, if I'd be willing to bet you, this is where, if you're struggling with, am I codependent and so forth, this is where you're struggling with. You're wanting to fix their core values. You're wanting to fix their problems. You're wanting to change what they believe. You're wanting to fix their convictions. You're wanting to solve all that. And there's a tension. And the tension is enhanced when their core values are opposite of yours, and they're guilting you, or they're trying to control you to sell out of your core values and your convictions to give in so they continue to make destroying decisions and choices in life. And you are in a tough place. It's the proverbial rock and a hard place. And that's the tension that everyone experiences. You were never meant to carry their daily knapsack. You were only called to come alongside of them when they're going through a disaster in their life. Okay? And so how do you flesh that out? How do you kind of bring it down to a place where you can kind of help understand in your life? Let's just go through. You need to understand that that you need to love others without rescuing them. Okay? Rescuing isn't coming alongside when they've had a disaster. Rescuing is when you're carrying their daily knapsack. Okay? They have to carry their own daily knapsack. So how do you do that? Number 8. Here's the question that you ask. And you're in that loving relationship. Am I loving? Am I rescuing? What do I do? Here it is. The last part of that in number 8 is, should they be doing it themselves? Should they be doing it themselves? That will bring clarity to whether you're enabling them or you're truly helping them. Because they are responsible for this. You as a believer, if God is leading you to do that, is to come alongside of them when the rock from the heavens has crushed them. Okay, so let me kind of help you out here. So let's imagine with divorce. Okay? There's a lot of emotional trauma. There's, all kinds of separation anxiety and all kinds of different things that they wrestle with in their life. And so in helping them out, there may be some emotional issues that you need to come alongside and kind of help them. Would you agree with that? Right? But only for a season. Only for a short time. And you watch their actions, not their words. So for instance, if you say, hey, I have a girlfriend at work, she went through a divorce, she had an amazing counselor that did great, I'll get that person's name, I'll give it to you. That's fine. That's coming alongside, that's helping them with some emotional issues, and then you give them that counselor, that psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever it may be, you give them their name, and it is on them to make the phone call. Do we get it? We don't make the phone call. We don't set up the appointment. We don't drive them there. We don't wait in the parking lot, right? Now, maybe there are some circumstances where you might want to go to be supportive of that, yes, but you get the feeling of what I'm saying, right? See, too often, we want to do it all. And they need to take their daily knapsack, and you need to guard your knapsack from your emotions and your feelings getting trampled on. Otherwise, it's going to cause that tension that you have in your life. So here's the homework, and we'll wrap up and go home. And Happy Father's Day. You probably wouldn't be surprised how many of these phone calls I get. So, letter A in your outline. You start the conversation from the position of love. That's grace, right? So every time that we have these conversations with folks, we start with grace. I'm here for you. I'm not against you. I'm not going to condemn you. I don't know what caused whatever it is, but hey, I'm not here to throw you under the bus. I'm going to get the grace from God. He's on my side. He loves me, right? And I'm going to be a steward of it, and I'm going to dispense it out to the folks around me. Letter B is I say no when it's best to say no. Truth. Truth. They get angry, you still have to. Because here's the deal, and this is what you got to get. If your core value is, I got to speak the truth in love, and they fear you, guilt you, push you, physically, emotionally, whatever it is, to sell out on that core value, you have just taken that line to guard your heart, and you've allowed their values to trample on your property line, and you are going to have conflict in yourself because you have sold out a core value in your life. Do you get that? Right? So you've got to say no when no is appropriate. In a loving way, you need to make sure that you say no. Letter C. And this is, I think, the hardest. And that is to allow the natural consequences to happen. This is by far the most difficult. And here's why. When our kids, if you have young kids, when your kids are young and they're like 4 and they get into the candy cabinet and they eat 3 pounds of M&Ms and they got red and green and stuff dribbling down their thigh and they're like, Mommy, my stomach is killing me, it's hurting, right? And they go into the bathroom, Lord willing, they make it to the bathroom, right? And they give you a deposit of all the things that they had just eaten, right? The truth is, as maddening as that is, the truth is that in a couple hours they're going to be better. The truth is you're going to give them some Pepto-Bismol or whatever it is, and in a few hours they're going to be right back wondering where the other bag is. Right? When they get older and they make choices, it isn't whether I'm going to eat the whole bag of M&Ms, and especially as they get into their adult years, the decisions that they're making, you recognize the consequences that has long-term effects. This isn't about whether they blow chunks. This is going to affect them for the next 18, 25, 35 years of their life. That is where it is so difficult to say, you got to take care of your own bag. Because everything in us wants to grab a hold of their bag and say, listen, you're not going to keep screwing up your life, and I'm going to snatch it from you. The problem with that is it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because God never intended for you to carry their bag. He intended for them to carry their bag. And this is by far, I think, the hardest one to sit back. Now, and I say this in full disclosure, when I was younger, and I had, 4 older brothers than me, and I would sit and watch my mom wrestle with this, and she would say to me, Danny, you have no idea what's this like, but one day you will. And when you have kids that are adults, and you see things and you're like, oof, it tears your heart out. Because it isn't about M&Ms. It's about life choices that can impact their life and everyone else that loves them forever. And so this is by far, I think, the hardest. But Galatians says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. You can rescue all you want. It's not going to work. And then letter D, and this is what most of you need to hear. Jesus is the Savior. We did not come to worship you today. You're not Jesus. You're not Jesus. He is the Savior. He never intended for you to fix their daily bag. He intended for you to come alongside of them in a messy, difficult situation for a season to carry their burden, but not to carry their load. And if you can learn that, or you can help someone that's near to you, learn that, it will be just a huge shift in change in your life and where you see the lines and how you guard your heart in your life. Now let me close with this and we'll be done. Next week, we're going to, and this ends up being kind of some heavy stuff. Next week, we're going to talk about blended families. Now, let me just kind of share this with you. This is, to me, mind-blowing. 42% of all marriages in America today will involve a blended family. Okay? Here's the other fact. Every American is either directly connected to a blended family or has a sibling or a parent who is in a blended family. Imagine that. Every single American, from what statistics say. Now, there may be, some person that isn't, somewhere in Montana in a cabin. Oh, no, they caught the Unabomber. Never mind. But typically, most families have blended families in and around them. Okay? Here's another interesting statistic. The average blended family lasts 3 years. The average blended family takes 5 to 7 years to find a rhythm for their marriage. So think of that. The average blended family, 3 years. Those of you who have blended families that have make it, that what they tell us is that it takes you 5 to 7 years to kind of figure out a rhythm of how your family dynamic is going to work. And so next week we're going to look at that. And again, I know in church life there's always someone, well, if it wasn't for Elvis Presley, we wouldn't have all these divorce and all this other stuff. Hey, listen. I live in the reality of the real, okay? The truth is, we have blended families all across our community, in and around our church, and in and around our family. My job as a pastor is to look at what the Word of God has to say about how to help them and equip them to be the best blended family they can be. Whether Elvis Presley sang, didn't sing, should have sang, whatever, okay, if that's your argument, keep it. I don't have time for it. I deal in the real and the now, right? And so if you have friends and family who are struggling with it, with blended families, we'd love to have them next week. All right? So one more time, happy Father's Day. Sorry to lay it on thick with y'all. Let's pray, okay?